The fifth and final step of the strategic planning process is measurement. This is where you're going to be putting in place the metrics that you need to measure the impact of your strategy against the objectives that you set in the very first stage of your planning process. So now this is a place you're going to want to go back and look at those objectives. And those have been defined, if you recall, pretty broadly. Now you want to think of more specific metrics that would help you know how you're performing against that broad objective. So if you set a broad objective that was something like we're trying to increase customer engagement with the brand, you might be coming up with some metrics like time spent per user on this digital experience, or likelihood of users to return and keep coming back to it, or number of friends that they're connecting to and sharing information with, or the likelihood of their clicking on links and offers to marketing, etc., from this digital experience you created. You have multiple metrics all to sort of understand this broader objective and if you're actually achieving it. As you come up with these multiple metrics, then think back on the classification system I presented. So which of those metrics are audience metrics? Which are channel engagement metrics? Which ones are universal engagement metrics? And which ones are financial metrics? And again, we saw there's some sort of pros and cons of each of them. So it's really valuable, if you can, to have some metrics in place in each of these four categories. So once you have that, you've got the metrics that you're planning to track, you want to sort of put this together into a plan that adds a few more sort of elements of guidance and thinking about how you're going to use the metrics. So first is identifying your KPIs. Right? You've got this list of metrics that relate to your objective. What's the key performance indicator? One or two things you're going to give the most attention to. Build your ROI model. So this is where you look at those metrics and say, well, from what we understand, we're going to try to see the impact of one on the other and how we think, channel engagement is driving universal engagement in the relationship with the customer or the financial outcome. Thinking back to the examples like the Ford Fiesta and the City Bike example we saw. It also may be valuable to select some dashboard metrics. This is a little different than the KPI. The point of a dashboard metric is speed and precision. So this is something that might not at the end of the day tell you what your ROI was of the initiative, but it's something you can be tracking maybe on a daily basis, maybe even an hourly or less. So those are those metrics that give you that kind of early signal of where things are going with your project. Whatever metrics you set up, it's also very important to set both baselines, where is the number currently, because this may be something that's not zero, it's going to be going up, and goals. Now, you may not know what a realistic goal is of where you're going to lift a given number from its current position because you're trying something very different. It's still very valuable to at least go through the exercise of setting a tentative goal. The problem is if you say, well, I don't know what's going to happen here, and you don't set a goal at all, then any number can be declared a success after the fact. So it's better to at least make a tentative goal. We think this is a reasonable target to move in terms of this metric, and then we'll learn from that and see what's possible. And the most important thing with metrics, as we've talked about before, is your plan, you should be ready to iterate it. So it's a first draft. You want to come up with a first draft with these different elements before you start the project and bring it to life. But then as you go, keep going back and revisiting it, revising it, tweak that ROI model, reconsider what goes in the dashboard metrics, etc. And lastly, you want to prepare, as part of this measurement planning, prepare for how you're going to learn and adapt. So ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what will success look like? If this project really succeeds and just really has a terrific impact for the customers and our business in the market, what do we imagine that would look like? It's sort of a qualitative description of what you think you might be expecting if this really takes off. It gives you something as a team to focus on. And then you want to think about how would you exit, right? So what are the warning signs or what are the measures that you could set and you say, well, 30 days out, we're going to measure this. And if we haven't got at least this much traction, or if we aren't able to get to a certain stage of the project within 60 days, then we know this is not really the best opportunity. The goal is if the idea is going to fail, you want it to fail fast and cheaply. And then you can go on to some of those other ideas you generated in your strategic planning. So plan in advance for those sort of checkpoints where you're going to decide, do we go forward or not? But also plan for how you might ramp up, right? So what if you get to that checkpoint and it's not just working, it's working great, and you're seeing a clear financial return, and you say, well, we want to amplify and grow this initiative. don't be caught, with no plans on hand. Have thought that through in advance. Say, well, if this really takes off, here are the additional people we need to hire, or this would be the next stage of adding more features, or this would be the next market we would try to extend it into. Have that plan in mind again of where you might go as a next stage if you're really seeing powerful success. All right, so that's the fifth. We've got 5 stages here to this strategic planning process. To recap, we start with defining your objectives. We move from there to understanding your customer segmentation and your brand positioning. With all that in mind, you select among the 5 broad strategies, ideate multiple concrete specific concepts, and then select again which prioritization across different criteria, which ones are most attractive to start with, that maybe mix of quick wins and big plays. Once you've got those in place, then plan for the execution of the ones you're starting with. What are the resources, the people, the skills you need to make it happen? And lastly, develop that measurement plan. So you know how you're going to measure, how you're going to make decisions as you go forward, whether to switch to another idea, continue ahead with success, or ramp up to build on this initial success to even more impact for your business. So this is a strategic plan you can use in any challenge that you're facing as a marketer going forward, thinking about customers and their digital behaviors. We'll also be using it in our assignment of the team to really put this to work for a real business challenge.